Hello and welcome to another video. It has been 1 year since I finally bit the bullet and installed Arch Linux on my main PC on my desktop computer that I use most of the time when I'm at home. So I wanted to make a video about my experience, about my year of the Linux desktop, which is, a play on the year of the Linux desktop meme, which a lot of Linux enthusiasts are waiting for, the time when finally the Linux desktop will be the most prevalent desktop operating system in the world. So let's take a look at how my year on Arch Linux passed by. What is my experience, what are the things I have learned, and what I am planning to do going forward with Arch Linux and in Linux in general. So my Linux journey started about 1.5 years ago in 2019, maybe in January or February, when YouTube started to suggest some Linux content to me. I think it was because I was previously watching a lot of machine learning and programming related content, and I ended up watching how to do some things on Linux, which led me down this rabbit hole about the Linux operating system. One of the first videos I watched was on systemd, which I have no idea why I even selected that video to watch. I think it had a very good title, kind of like a modern day tragedy or tragedy of systemd or something like that. So I just listened to it while I was doing some chores, and I got really interested in Linux and in the whole concept of free software. I got introduced to the Free Software Foundation. I finally learned about Richard Stallman and his work, and so I started to pay more attention to it. So I wasn't really using a lot of proprietary software, but I was still using quite a lot, and I was using a proprietary operating system. But I was slowly starting to migrate towards the free software solutions before switching to Linux. And I was also got familiar with virtual machines, so I got myself a VirtualBox and installed Linux Mint and Manjaro on a virtual machine just to play around. Let's see what kind of software are available in the repositories, how can I use them, what kind of workflow could I follow if I installed those operating systems. And while I was doing that, I was listening to a lot of Linux podcasts, and especially Joe Collins was one of the people who had a very big impression on me. And even though he is not an Arch user, the way he talked about Arch Linux was really what started to get me interested. So he's in the camp who does not suggest Arch Linux to anyone. Basically, he thinks it is for the kind of people who would not listen to his podcasts. So he thinks that the people who are listening to his podcasts, who are mostly just regular computer users who want to get rid of Microsoft for one reason or other, they shouldn't really go for Arch Linux. But I really knew that I'm not that type of person. I'm more in like the curious kind of person, and there were a lot of other content creators, and I just said this bad word. So there were other people who were publishing videos on YouTube about Linux who would have the opinion that Arch Linux is a very flexible and a very powerful operating system, so it's absolutely worth putting some time into learning the intricacies of the system, and in general you can learn more about the inner workings of a Linux operating system and Linux in general if you choose to install the Arch Linux over some more user-friendly distribution of Linux. And so that's what I did. I watched a few videos of other people installing Arch Linux in virtual machines, and then I myself did that in a virtual machine, and my first trial was failure, and my second trial was actually successful, and I streamed that. You can still find it on my channel. It's really outdated, so you shouldn't learn anything from that. And then I was playing around with Arch Linux in this virtual machine. I was trying to learn more about the workings of the system, how to install the desktop environment, how to customize it, how to set up different things. And when I was kind of comfortable with it, I decided to clone my operating system from the virtual machine onto a USB stick. And I made this bootable USB drive. You can find my video about that one, how I did that. And so I could use that to test how my hardware works with the Linux drivers. And after that, it was about this time last year. It was not exactly the same time, but it was the same time according to the lunar calendar, because there was a holiday that is that time, which is based on the lunar calendar, and this time it is the same holiday next year based on the lunar calendar. So 1 lunar year ago, I finally got rid of Windows on my main computer and installed Arch Linux. And since then, a few things have happened. So I switched from the Budgie desktop to the Cinnamon desktop due to the problems I encountered with the former, and I started to get into bash scripting. I wrote my own script for backup, and I wrote a few other small helper scripts for things that I am doing quite often. So you can find my backup script also in this channel. I have a video where I explain how it works, and you can find it in my GitLab repository too. I also created my first AUR package, which is just a theme pack, but anyways, it's mine. And recently I've been working on setting up a website and web applications on virtual private servers which run Debian, not Arch Linux. And so recently I had some experience which forced me to learn more about the differences between distributions and differences between packaging software, which is one of the biggest difference that exists between distributions. So what have I learned? Well, one of the first things is that you should always dig deeper. So especially in Arch Linux, if something goes wrong, then you can find some kind of command line step-by-step tutorial on how to fix it. But usually it's a better idea to check out each command one by one. What do they do, so you can understand what exactly went wrong and what you have to do to fix it. And well, you have to know who to ask and how to ask. So sometimes things don't work, and you kind of have to figure out whether should I bother the people on the Arch Linux forum, should I bother the upstream developers of this software, because it's not always obvious, but you should figure out what your problem is. Is it a bug that exists in the software? Does it look more like some kind of Arch-centric problem? And you have to make up your mind about that. It's usually a safer choice to ask things on the proper Arch Linux forums, and the worst thing that can happen is that someone will tell you that, well, unfortunately this is an issue with upstream, so you should go and maybe file a bug report. And sometimes they will help you narrow down what exactly the bug is and what kind of bug report should you prepare for the upstream. And also it is a good kind of experience to just read the forums in the beginning. So in the first few months, I spent every day maybe 10-20 minutes just reading random forum posts, like what kind of problems people are running into and how the solutions are prepared. And this helped me a lot when I had to ask my own questions, how to ask those questions. So usually it's a good idea to have an exact list of what were the commands you issued and what were the responses, maybe error messages and things like that. You should be familiar with where the log files are, like for example the pacman logs, how to access the journal, the systemd journal, and how to search in that. That can be both very useful when you have to ask questions. I also learned to keep a few virtual machines around where I can test things on non-critical systems first. So if I want to do some more major change, then I should better try it in a virtual machine, or maybe when you do something that might screw your system around, like for example you want a different bootloader, you want to learn about bootloaders, maybe it's a better idea to test it on a non-critical system, which virtual machines are perfect for that, because you can just copy the virtual disk and just reset to the previous state if you want to. And well, the other thing that you should be aware of, that sometimes big updates break poorly maintained dependent packages. There was also a thing I learned, that was my problem with the Budgie desktop, that there was a change in the GNOME stack that was incompatible with how the Budgie desktop was compiled, and when the new GNOME version came out, they automatically just recompiled the Budgie desktop, and that binary, even though was compiled against the newer GNOME stack, the behavior was different than expected, so the desktop would not work properly. And so that took maybe 2 weeks to figure out for the maintainers, because there was not like a widely used package, and the maintainer probably did not use this desktop environment himself. So these kind of things can happen, and it's a good idea if it's like a critical stuff like a desktop environment, it's a good idea to keep around a backup option. And so my backup option was Cinnamon, and when I had more and more problems with the Budgie desktop, I just permanently switched to the Cinnamon desktop. And what are the things I like about Arch Linux? So one of the things is, of course, the use of binary packages. I don't want to compile everything. I don't really know that much about compiling binaries, so it is a good thing for me that most of the packages, at least the packages in the official repositories, are compiled by other people, so I don't have to worry about that. I also like the fact that there is minimal distribution level tinkering when it comes to software that is packaged. So when you install a program, you will get almost exactly what the programmers, the developers of this program, of this application actually intended. So a lot of other distros would change a few things around or even fork those projects. But it's a good idea, I think, that we use what the original developers made, so we can just go to the original developers if we have some problems or we don't understand something. I like that approach. I like the simplistic approach in package management. So the package manager basically only installs and uninstalls stuff, which can be a little strange for people who are using Debian, or Debian-based distributions, where the package manager also runs a lot of this kind of post-install scripts to automatically customize the software and start the systemd, or the systemd units are started automatically by the package manager. In Arch Linux, you can add pacman hooks, which will do post-install or pre-install scripts, but in general, pacman does not concern itself with those kind of things. So that's why usually you should check out the Arch Wiki page for each software, so you know what kind of the systemd units are provided, what should you do to which ones should be enabled, what kind of customizations you should do before you start using that program after you've installed it. I also like this rolling release style of package updates, so I always get the newest version of this great software that I use, and every great update will roll out, be it user interface or just underlying stuff or security updates. Everything will roll out very soon compared to other distributions. There is also a very wide variety of software available because the packaging standards are quite simple. So basically anyone can easily or relatively easily create an AUR package, and the packaging standard works in a way that these packages can just pull the source code from a a Git repository from somewhere and just build it, and you can just install them very easily. And also this makes it more easier for the distro maintainers to maintain a lot of packages. And we can see that, of course, it's not everything always works out perfectly, but due to this and also the popularity of Arch Linux and the very dedicated developer base, and a lot of people are working on this operating system. So these factors all mean that there is a very wide variety of software that is available natively. You don't need to worry about snap packages or app images or stuff like that in most cases. And so with what can I suggest Arch? Whom are the people I could suggest Arch Linux with a clear conscience? Well, if you don't mind learning new things, then I think Arch Linux is a good kind of option. The Arch Wiki is a very good source of information, so you can just go around the Arch Wiki and learn a lot for yourself and for your future endeavors, stuff like that. And if you don't mind the legwork that comes with setting up everything, then it's a good distribution. So if you are the kind of person who would customize everything to to the last millimeter in your programs, then Arch Linux is a good choice, because no one assumed anything about what would you like to do. You can just get everything bare bones, and you can start from zero to customize it for yourself. There is no pre-customization by some other guy with a total different priorities and totally different style. If you are ready to spend some time on the regular updates, then Arch Linux can be a good choice for you. I know a lot of people don't like the idea that if you don't update like for 2 weeks, then suddenly you have to download 3 gigabytes of packages. But yeah, you have to be ready for that. Usually it doesn't take more than 15 minutes for me to do my weekly updates, and usually things don't break. But be prepared to read up always before update on the Arch Linux website if there is anything that needs manual intervention, or you can just subscribe to their RSS feed or the mailing lists, and you will be notified about these things. Okay, so if you want to use some fringe software or have your own software that you wrote and you want to package it and use it, then Arch Linux can be a good choice for you. And if you are okay with other people compiling the software for you, so if you are not the kind of guy who wants to customize everything so much that even you want all the compile time optimizations to favor your device, then yeah, you can just go for Arch Linux. If you want more customization, more kind of compile time stuff, tinkering, then yeah, Gentoo will be probably the choice that you should go with. And so Arch Linux is not for you if you are not picky, just want something that just installs fast and works on your PC, then you should go for Ubuntu or Linux Mint or Manjaro maybe, but not Arch Linux. Arch Linux takes a lot of time and you have to customize it, unless it will be damn ugly. And well, yeah, so if you don't mind, you just want a working system, and you just change the background image and maybe the theming, you switch to another theme that have been previously installed on your system, then Arch Linux is not your another choice for you. If you want your system to work without fiddling and much interventions, then Arch Linux is not for you. Arch Linux requires fiddling at install time, and you have to keep in mind that you should update the system often. And if you have AUR packages, then those will have to be recompiled sometimes. So yeah, you have to be prepared for that. If you just want your system to just always work and you don't want to care about it, and just updates should be, you don't want frequent updates, then don't go for Arch Linux. If you don't care about how things work and don't mind if things are hidden from you, then also just go for something else. Arch Linux will require you to understand a little more about the system than most other distributions. And if you want to, if you are like in the total opposite end of the spectrum, you are kind of a guy who wants to be in control of everything, and even this kind of abstraction that Arch Linux provides you is too much, then yeah, then you can go for a source-based distribution instead. Arch Linux can be used as kind of a source-based distribution if you are going for like the AUR packages instead of the mainline packages or the official repository packages, but it's kind of painful because that's not the default behavior. That kind of behavior is to extend the capabilities of Arch Linux. It's not to be the main focus of this operating system. So my plans for the future is the last segment of this video I want to talk about. So I will keep Arch Linux on my desktop. I am very satisfied with it. I like how it works. I don't have any problems. I didn't see anyone suggest me anything that would be better for my personal use case. So Arch Linux, what stays on this computer. I want to learn more about KVM and virtualization because that would give me some options to discover other things without having to scrub my Arch Linux distribution or Arch Linux operating system here. I would like to replace more stuff with Linux because of the free software aspect. So for example, I would like to install a router with OpenWRT. I would like to have a Linux-based tablet in the future and a Linux phone and stuff like that, but that's kind of a slow progress, and probably I will still have to keep at least one device with Android or iOS, just because a lot of apps that I require to use on like just to live, for example, banking apps and some instant messaging apps that are only available on Android and iOS. I probably cannot get rid of them, but at least I could get them on a separate machine that I can, just hide in my drawer when I don't need them and keep them turned off. I would also like to extend what I'm using on these rented virtual private servers, so I would like to move all my use cases and hopefully a lot of my family's use cases over from proprietary and spyware powered solutions, for example, like the Facebook for communication and I don't know, Google Drive for file sharing and stuff like that. So instead of these, I would like to introduce my immediate family to the open source and free software solutions on a virtual private server that I rent and which I have full control over. And of course, I would like to study more and more, and one of the focuses would be more programming related stuff. Hopefully I can figure out some good projects and I can share my progress with you, and I can talk about what kind of new challenges I am facing on that front, so I can keep up some content which is, a little different. So there is just so much tutorials that I can make on Arch Linux, especially when once I get an operating system that's totally set up for my needs, then there is not much to learn about this. So I will have to, diversify my interest in the future. So thank you for watching this video, and if you have any questions about my experience with Arch Linux, you can leave them down below. And well, tell me, how have you been on your Linux life? So how was your last 12 months on Linux have been? What kind of distribution or distributions have you tried? And what were the things that you liked them? What were the things you disliked them? And well, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more content which will be coming. Tutorials, opinion pieces, everything related to Linux and free software on the Nice Micro channel. And I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.